Recording in progress. Welcome back to unit testing video series. Today is the fourth session, and today we are going to discuss how to unit test controllers in ASP.NET Core Web API project. Before that, first of all, we will discuss what is controller, or you can say what are the role and responsibilities of a controller, why it is important to unit test controllers, what are the benefit we will get by unit testing controller logic. Then we will see how you can unit test controller class. So let us proceed and understand this concept in detail. So what are controllers? So first of all, you need to remember controller are nothing but classes. Like other classes, what we define in our project, controller are also called as classes. Controller class is the main entry point for all HTTP requests coming to our application. So for example, whenever we define any web services, then the controller is responsible for handling all the HTTP requests. So whenever a client send any get request, post request, put request, or delete request, it is the controller. Actually, inside the controller, we are going to define some action method. So these action methods are going to handle the incoming HTTP request. So let us understand, right, what are the role and responsibility of a controller. So please observe this image. So the client, the consumer of our services, it can be a browser, it can be mobile app, it can be some other applications like desktop applications, some other web services, some console applications. So anyone, the client can be anyone. So whenever a client sends any HTTP request to our backend services, then it is controller who is going to handle that request, right? Going to handle that request. So once the controller receives the incoming HTTP request, then what the things are going to be handled by the controller. So first of all, controller is going to parse and validate the input. So whatever the data in the sense any request body data, data in the sense of any query string parameter, any header value, right? Whatever. So whatever the data sent by the client, first it is the controller responsibility validate the data. Once the data is valid, then what the controller next is going to do? It is going to call the next layer. That layer might be your repository layer. That layer might be your business logic layer. That layer might be your service layer. So here in our project, we are dealing with the controller layer, service layer, and the repository layer. And from the controller layer, we are going to invoke the service layer. So what is the service layer content? It is going to contain the main logic or main core logic of our business. Once the service layer process the request, right, then the service layer will return some response to the controller, and the controller, based on the service layer response, going to format and return HTTP responses back to the client who initially made the request. So, what are the responsibility of controller if someone asks? So, you have to tell controller is the one who is going to receive the incoming HTTP request. Controller is the one who is going to parse and validate the incoming data. Controller is the one who is going to call the business logic layer or service layer to process the request. Controller is the one who is going to format the response and return the appropriate HTTP response based on the outcome of the request to the client who initially made the request. So these are the responsibilities of a controller. Now, next, what we need to do, we need to understand why we need to unit test the controller. Already we have discussed. What are the responsibilities of a controller? Means for that responsibilities, we need to write a unit test. For example, if you look at the request, right, then what are the right? Why unit testing the controller means to right, to ensure, right, to validate the data whatever coming from the client is correct. So we need to ensure the data is correct. For that purpose, we need to write unit test. We need to ensure the controller is going to deal with the appropriate service layer method. Right? So appropriate service layer method. So for that purpose, we need to write unit test. We need to ensure the controller is going to return correct HTTP status code and the data, right? Based on the scenario, based on the outcome, based on the processing of the HTTP request, whatever the data we are returning, that should be valid. For example, if an order is exist, what data we need to return? If order not exist, what data we need to exist? While fetching the data, if some exception occurred, then what we need to return? That means what? Based on the right processing of the HTTP request, we need to return proper HTTP status code and data. And also, we need to handle the error. Definitely, whenever we are writing the code, right, whether it is controller layer, repository layer, or service layer, handling the error efficiently is very, very important. And also we need to write the logic to handle different kind of a error. For example, if write file, for example, product not found, insufficient stock, right? So basically different scenarios we need to handle. So this for this purpose we need to write unit test in our application. Then why we need to mock the service layer in controller unit test? As I have already discussed, right? So if you look at our project, so this is my order controller. So the order controller now is dealing with order service. That means for creating a new order or for getting the order by ID, it is going to deal with the order service layer, right? So order service layer, for example, if you go to the implementation, this is the order service layer. And order service layer is going to deal with the order repository. For example, you can say order repository. So this is going to be my order repository. So what is the flow? Flow is controller handle the incoming HTTP request. Controller will deal with the order service. Order service is going to deal with the order repository. Order repository is going to deal with the database. That means controller having dependency on which layer? The controller having dependency on the service layer. For example, you can see order service to create an order or to get the order by ID, it is going to deal with this order service. So for this controller, who is the dependency object? It is the order service. So this order service, right, I cannot use directly. I cannot use directly in the sense, for example, whatever the logic we have written here, right? That logic we should not test while I'm testing this create order method. So while I'm testing the create order method, my main objective is to check this logic, right? Objective means it should validate this data. If this create order method returning not found exception, whether it is returning this data, if argument exception this data, invalid exception this data. So basically what exactly it means while I'm unit testing this create order method, we should not test the logic whatever written inside this create order method. This is the job of service layer. So whenever we are writing the service layer, at that time we need to test this logic. So what exactly it means? It means while writing the unit test code for the controller, what for the dependency object, that dependency object mock we need to create, and within that mock we need to say whenever the create order method is called, what data needs to be returned. So whenever the get order by ID method is called, then what data we need to return. Why we need to write the mock object? Let us try to understand. So in this case, right, if you look at this image, right, you will understand it very clearly. Why we need to mock the service layer? Because to focus on the controller logic. Just only check the controller's behavior without being influenced by how the service layer or database work. Second, faster test. See, if we are mocking the dependency object means what? Means there is no real database or external system is called. So when there is no real database and external system is called, means the test is going to run much faster. So faster test run means better, or you can say quicker feedback going to be provided during the development. So more reliable test, see, as there is no external dependencies, can cause flaky or inconsistent test result. Mock eliminates this by providing stable, predictable responses. Means what? Now, whenever we create a mock object, what data needs to be returned, what we can predict. Why? Because we are going to provide the data. And finally, complete control over other scenarios. So whatever all scenarios you want to test, that what you can program. For example, I want return some not found exception. I want to return some right argument exception. So all these scenarios you can easily create, right, by creating a mock object. This is not clear at the moment. Don't worry. Now we are going to see how we can do this practically in our application. So now if you look at our order controller, so currently the order controller having one dependency object called iOrder service, and this iOrder service or order service having the actual implementation which we don't want to use. Now within the create order method, it is going to create one order successfully. If it creates, it is going to return 200. Otherwise, it is going to return not found, bad request, and a 500 status code in case of any any error which is not being catched by this catch block. Then another method is there, that is get order, which is going to return the data if it found. If not found, it is going to return not found, right, status code. So let us proceed and see how we can write unit test for this. Right. So we have already installed the mock framework to create the mock object. If you look at the right this test project, so there is a package folder, and you have already installed. We have already installed this mock framework. So this mock framework is basically used to create the mock object. Now what I need to do is, as I'm following the industry coding standard, so for testing the controllers, we are going to create one folder called controller. So let me first go ahead and add a folder with the name controllers. Controller. So inside this controllers folder, whatever all controllers you created in your API project, for each controller you need to create a separate class file for the unit test, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a unit test class. So what should be your unit test class name? Now whatever your controller name printed by text. So let me go ahead and create a class file with the name orderControllerTest.cs. So once we created the class file, then we need to write unit test. So I'm writing all the unit test at once, then I will explain how this is going to be created. So first of all, we need to create one mock object. Mock object for which service? Mock object for this iOrder service. So that is what I'm doing. I'm creating the mock object of iOrder service. And this controller, you can see it is a class. And manually, if I want to invoke this method, create order and get order, then definitely I need to create an instance. See, whenever the client sends the request, it is the responsibility of the framework to create the instance and invoke the appropriate action method based on the incoming URL, HTTP method, and the route data. But in this case, we are going to do this thing manually. So we need to create an instance and we can create. Why? Because it is a class. So for that purpose, I'm creating this variable. So within the constructor, what I'm doing, I'm initializing my order service. And this mock order service dot object is going to provide an implementation of order service that what we will see later. So this that is what here you can see. Mock order service dot object, it is going to provide an implementation object, right, of this iOrder service, and that object we are passing here. So now, right, now the order service what we registered, right? If you see the order service what we registered here, that instance is not going to be used. So now the order service, right, what we are providing from here, that order service instance is going to be used by this orders controller. So once we have the orders controller ready, then what we can do is we can write the unit test code. And for creating any method as a unit test method, you can decorate that method with fact attribute. And here we need to follow some pattern. What is the pattern? Triple A, arrange, act, and usher. Arrange means set up the text data and the mock object. That means invoke the method. Effect means verify the result. So for first text, what I'm saying, I'm going to write a get order existing ID return OK with the order. So basically, what exactly it means? I'm going to test the get order method what we created here. That method name I'm providing here get order existing ID. So here, what I'm going to do, I'm going to provide one order ID which is exist, and this should return me OK with the order data. So this is my order ID. So first of all, what we need to do, arrange. Arrange means right, this constructor code is coming part of the arrange means we need to make the instance ready. We need to make the mock object ready. So that is already done. Now what we need to do after creating the instances, then we need to set the data. Data means when the mock object method is being invoked, what data to be returned. For example, I'm creating one order ID 1. I'm creating this order response DTO, which is going to return that order ID. So whatever. So currently I'm simply returning this information. Whatever information you want written, that what you can return. Now, if you look at the order controller, so whenever the get order by ID method is called on the service instance, that data it is going to return. But in this case, this service instance we have already mocked. So that service instance we have already mocked. So on this mocked service instance, when the get order by ID async method is being invoked, it is going to return this order response. So basically, we have made the instances ready. We have set up the data, and then we need to start the act. Act means invoking the action method. So controller dot get order method. So we are invoking this method. So when we invoke that method, it will return the response. And once the response is returned, so we need to check each time. So basically, whatever the response is this return time, is similar to OK object result. If OK object result, then that is going to be return true. So once it return, then what I need to do? I need to check right whatever the order response I have set, and this OK object dot value, I mean whatever the data written by this method are same or not. If both are same, that means that test is false, otherwise it is going to be false. So this the second one is non-existing. Non-existing means it should return me not found. Why? Because that is what I have written here. If the order what I'm passing is not exist, then it should return me not found. So that's what I'm going to test. So for this purpose, whatever I'm doing here, I'm setting this get order by ID method. So when it is invoked with any integer type data, so it is going to return me null object. So now what I need to do, I need to call the method. So whatever the ID I pass, whether I pass 1 to 500, whatever. So it is always going to return me null. And once it return null, so definitely that action method is going to return not found. So once it return not found, then we need to check whether the result, whatever I'm getting, is this equals to not found. If it is not found, then it is going to be pass. Otherwise, it is going to be. Next one is create order with valid model and returns OK result. So what exactly it means? So I will create one order with a valid data, and in that case, it should return me OK with the order information. So for that purpose, I'm going to write this unit test. So first of all, I'm going to create the order created DTO. So here I'm specifying the order item. So this is my created order. So this is my response. So basically this is the data what I'm going to pass. See, guys, remember here, don't go with the data what we are passing. So that is not important here. So with what data you are creating, that is not our job. So our job is to verify the appropriate response that what we are getting. And in this case, what response we are setting, that what we should get. Right? For example, I'm creating this order detail. This is a valid order detail, and this is a response what we will get. So in this case, when we call this create order async method by passing this order DTO, it is going to return this one. So this detail will take as input, and this secret order is going to be the return. That means what now within this order controller, when this create order by as ID create order async method is passed right invoke using this detail, it should return me this response, create order response. Now so once the arrange part is ready, then we need to call the act. That means invoking the action method. So here, by passing this order PTO, we are invoking the create order method, which is going to return me this create order. So first of all, I need to ensure the result type is OK result. So as we are using the OK method, if it is OK result, then that the test is passed. Again, what we need to do, we need to check whatever the created order and whether I'm getting the same response by accessing the value property or not. If same, then the test is going to be pass. Next one is invalid model. So basically what I'm doing here, now I'm going to write some invalid model state error so that I'm going to check whether I'm getting that model validation, I mean that request error or not. In this case, what I'm doing here, now manually, in this case, manually, I'm setting the model state as invalid. So here I'm saying customer ID is required. So this is manually, I'm setting the model state is invalid. Then I'm calling the create order method. I'm not passing any object. And here, the result should be bad request object result. So if this is bad result, then there should not be any data. So in that case, right, it should return me the error information, right? Error information should not be null. So whatever the error, for example, customer ID request, this message should be there. And if it is not, means there is no error, then request fail. If there is some error, the request is going to be passed. So now let me run the application and see. I mean, I'm going to run the test and see whether it is working fine or not. So go to the text and then select a test explorer, right? Then you can go to this controller folder. So here you can see for unit test. So you can run this unit test independently. So by clicking on the run option, which should run the test in the background and show you the status whether the test passed successfully or not. So here the test passed successfully. This green tick mark is there. If you want to run all the test, then you can click here and click on the run button. So in this case, all the tests are going to be checked, and in this case, you can see green tick mark means all the tests are completed successfully. So unit testing in ASP.NET Core Web API controller is essential to guarantee that your API behave as expected, process input correctly, return appropriate HTTP response in all scenarios. All scenarios in the sense positive scenarios as well as negative scenarios as well as exception scenarios. By mocking the service layer and isolating controller, test becomes fast, stable, and focused solely on controller logic. By creating the mock service layer object, we can only test the controller logic. This approach not only improves the code quality but also make it easier to detect bugs early, going to provide a good maintenance over the time and give you confidence, right, related to deliver robust API that provide a smooth client experience. So that's it for today. In the next session, we are going to discuss how to write a unit test for the repository layer. If you like this session, then please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon. And in the case, if you want to get the document, whatever I'm showing in the presentation, then please put your email ID in the comment section and I will personally will send this document to your email ID. Thank you. Thank you for watching this video.